Welcome to Fortune Forecast. I am Daisy, your hostess, and we have started a book titled Prosperity Plus by Seaman Garns. It was published in 1938 by the School of Psychology and Divine Science. It is in the public domain. If you'd like to jump into the narrative, please go to the description and hit that timestamp. You'll get right there. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I'm glad you found us. And to our Fortune community, welcome back. In the previous video where we have the contents of the majority of the first part of this book, where there was that introduction to prosperity, and the author was saying, hey, you all have the power within you, and it's all in mind. And as many of the authors that have delved in this particular topic of abundance, of prosperity, they've gone to that part talking that everything starts in the mind. And I would invite you, as I've done for myself, to take a moment and do, like I would say, an evaluation of yourself. And I say this from the most sincere place. It's like when I have my clients that come to me for consulting with the use of my tarot. And I always like to start with, you are paying for this time. And I would love for you to maximize your investment in yourself. And we start from that foundation. So if we start from that foundation, that the time that you spend evaluating yourself is an investment in your future self. The challenge here is to try and step away from yourself so that you can act as if you were someone grading a term paper, or as someone giving someone they truly love real hardcore advice. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here, is that if we don't take time to see where we're standing and to kind of take a look at how things and events are woven, we can probably, like this author has stated, come to the realization that everything starts in mind. You thought of the idea of getting a job. You thought an idea that you wanted to be in a relationship. You thought an idea that you wanted to buy that car. You thought the idea that you wanted to, travel and see new places. You thought these ideas. And that was the spark. And then he talked about secondary causes, which I'm not going to go in this chapter, but I've actually heard it in several other authors, and something that hopefully, God willing, I will explore and bring to our channel here. So let's move on to the next chapter, because it's going to be interesting how this author will tell us how it works. Are you looking forward to that? And I love it. We're going to go through that, and we're going to move on through the 5 steps to mastery. So stick with me in this video. Let's learn and grow together. Talk 6. How it works. But just how would this formula work in life? I imagine you saying, just as this man had said to me. A precise mathematical statement of the process by which mind creates is helpful, but I do not see precisely how I could apply it. Give me a concrete picture of how such a process should be used to establish prosperity. Well, first let us look at a parable from an ancient Eastern book as a story illustrating how the principle works under ideal conditions. In the Orient, from earliest times, it has been the custom to embody great truths in story form. The parable, the allegory, and the fable all had their birth in the Far East. We in the West are just beginning to recognize how important it is to see the fundamental wisdom of life embodied in concrete story form. The best illustration of this principle is given in the Old Testament in the 4th chapter of 2 Kings. I'm not quoting the story because I want you to feel that it's coming from the Bible, makes it less any more authoritative. but because, regardless of its source, it is a scientifically accurate statement of how the law of creative mind works. Perhaps its parabolical and psychological meaning will be even clearer if you forget that it is part of a larger book and treated as a self-existent unit, a single story with a double meaning. It is the story of Elisha and the widow with the cruse of oil. You will remember the story well, but I should like to give it to you in the words of Farrar Fenton's modern English translation of the Bible. Once a woman, a wife of one of the preachers, appealed to Elijah, saying, "Your servant, my husband, has died. And you know that your servant reverenced the ever-living. But a creditor has come to take my 2 sons for his slaves." And Elisha asked her, "What can I do for you? Inform me what furniture you have in your house." When she said, "There is nothing in the house of your handmaid except a jar of oil," he then answered, "Go and borrow vessels from all the inhabitants of the street, barrels of a not small capacity. Then come and shut the door behind you and behind your sons, and pour into all these vessels and fill them all." She accordingly went from him and shut the door behind herself and her 2 sons who went with her, and they poured. And when they had filled the vessels, she said to one son, "Bring me another cask." But he replied to her, "There is not another cask." Then the oil ceased. She therefore went to the man of God and informed him, who said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts and support yourself with the remainder." In all the ancient Eastern allegories and parables, widow is used symbolically to represent the feminine polarity of mind, the unconscious or subconscious level of our active mentality when it is disassociated from the directive conscious mind, the husband or Lord. There is a tendency, which we all recognize from experience, for mind to drop down into the realm of fear and worry when poverty comes knocking at the door. We lose courage, our initiative, and our fearless power to accomplish, and the whole personality seems to be turned into an unreasoning chaos of disturbance. It is such a state of mind that is symbolized by the widow, the emotional or instinct mind shorn of the cortex brain and its power of initiative is a non-productive widow. Yet, the subconscious level of mind is at the same time potentially the builder, which gives concrete form to whatever idea or ideal is handed to it. This level of mind has built the body and now operates its function. It registers memory impressions, records and operates habit patterns, and has a marvelous power of pouring electronic substance into any matrix image which is held before consciousness. When the subconscious level of mind is at peace and imbued with love, when the conscious mind as husband has taken its rightful place as directive thought power, the subconscious mind accepts whatever patterns are given it and starts at once molding them into permanent form. But when it is dominated by fear, it produces only the fear images which primitive emotion and the instinct life fling upon the screen of imagination. So our parable is saying that when this level of mind is not properly directed and becomes disturbed by fear of poverty and lack, it is not able to produce and sinks deeper and deeper into debt. So long as you are dominated by fear of poverty and allow worry to direct consciousness, you will not free yourself to any very real demonstration of prosperity. In the Eastern allegories, the masculine principle almost always symbolizes the power and initiative of the intellect and will. When this masculine principle is the mind of a prophet, the suggestion is that conscious mind, which does the directing, is governed by highly spiritual understanding. Because the mind of the individual is lifted up to the recognition that conscious mind is the one creative wisdom, the prophet, the ideas received and operated will immediately result in a new order of harmony. The moment you cast fear out of your mind and join your conscious mind to the one wisdom, resolving that the productiveness of creative mind shall work through you, you will find wise suggestions coming to you, and if you will follow them with full cooperative enthusiasm, as did the widow at the suggestion of the prophet, you will find poverty a thing of the past. The first response of the prophet is suggestive. When the widow was told her story, the prophet does not at once say, "Let me handle this entire situation for you." Rather, he speaks a challenging phrase which throws her back upon her own responsibility by saying, "What can I do for you?" It is as though he said, "You are the one who must produce for yourself. No one else can get you out of poverty, for each must create for himself. Besides, you are a part of the productive mind of the universe and can produce easily and adequately if you will obey the law of your own inner consciousness." Then, having thrown her back upon her own powers, he challenges her to inventory her own potentialities. "Inform me what you even now have in the house." Here again, the prophet mind points us back to another idea. That wealth of all sorts, if it be legitimately produced, comes to us from within ourselves through the use of the qualities and powers which we already have in the deep self. One should turn back within himself and keep saying, "Have I any unused powers? What is it I have always longed to do? Have I a deep desire to serve in any special way? Perhaps my desire points to some unused talent." It is always the power and the substance of the subconscious which produces for us our wealth, and if we are in poverty, we may be sure that one of the defects is that we have been looking outside ourselves for the source of our supply. So deep-seated is the counter-belief that values come to us from without, that we pretty generally accept the phrases making money and getting a competency. But money only represents values, ideas, processes, or service. Thus, service at its best, when motivated by love, is a basic and fundamental kind of wealth. This we all have within us, and by means of it, we may establish prosperity, if we will wisely pour it out to other people with a deep desire to make them happy and to fulfill their needs. This is wealth enough if we only understand how to market it. What we need to do is to busy ourselves with finding a way in which we may outpour that which we have so that it becomes truly significant to someone else. For money does not come back to us until other people value our service. We must first create a service which is desired by other people, and then continually persuade them of the value of that which we have to give. The prophet's reply to this poverty-stricken suggestion of the widow about her single pot of oil is strange indeed. He says, "Go and borrow the vessels of the inhabitants in the street, your neighbors." And then, if we may be allowed to paraphrase, he continues, "And get vessels of no small capacity, empty vessels. Borrow them, bring them into your house, and when you have closed the door behind you and behind your sons, pour into these vessels until you fill them full." The suggestion of borrowing the empty vessels of one's neighbors is a strange suggestion if one takes it literally. But if you see that this too is symbolical, and that it means find out what your neighbors need, find out what they want most, and then get ready to supply their needs. No person in the wide world ever made any money who did not fill some deep need of others. Find some empty vessel of his fellows. What the neighbors in your street need is exactly what hundreds of thousands of people in other streets and in other towns and cities need. And if you will find how to serve the few people near you, and then having found that pattern of service, enlarge it to mass production, you will find yourself significantly serving, and money will come streaming back to you, representing the gratitude of your fellows. For money is a comeback and only pours into our laps when we are giving significant service to society. This is, in deepest truth, the law of prosperity. Find the needs, the empty vessels, fill them more efficiently and lovingly than anyone else, and people will, in turn, fill your coffers. The next suggestion made by the prophet is that the oil which had filled these vessels, the oil of love and service, can easily be turned into coin. He assumed, as well all may rightly assume, that loving service is easy to coin into adequate supply, if we are but wise enough to market it under the law. Many people do not properly evaluate their own service, and many people who correctly evaluate their service do not know how to sell it to other people. The only condition in this case is merely your ability to persuade someone else of the values to them of that which you are giving. The remainder of the story is merely the narrator's tale of how his directions were carried out. The widow takes her 2 sons into the inner room and starts pouring into these new concepts, vessels, of her neighbor's needs. The one significant phrase in this part of the story is that of the son in response to her direction. "Bring me another cask." His reply being, "There is not another one left." And the oil immediately ceased to flow. This is a most picturesque way of saying that when you have filled your neighbor's needs, at once your service may cease. If your outpouring stops too soon, you are poverty-stricken. If the flow continues and new vessels are continually brought, you are made prosperous as the widow of this story was made rich. If you continue to pour, regardless of demand, as in mass production, you have overproduction and depreciated values. Casks, desires, are a demand upon the subconscious mind. In other words, when you have lovingly and thoughtfully served your neighbors, you will have all you can use, and this is enough. Don't hoard. Don't provide in fear for rainy days. What you store up against fear contingencies, you almost always lose. This is the story of thousands of people who have laid up money in fear. Just as in our last Great Depression, that which had been stored in fear had to be used in fear or was swept away without bringing either joy or comfort. On the other hand, you have a right to all the money you can keep truly serving your fellows. This, then, is a perfect allegory of prosperity. It tells us that within ourselves, at this moment, are all the powers that we need. It tells us that we must awaken our consciousness to other people and their needs, and then that we must bestir ourselves to supply them more lovingly and more efficiently than anyone else in the world. When Henry Ford was asked what he would do if he suddenly lost all his money and his present business, he replied, "I would think out some other fundamental need of all the people, and I would then supply that need more cheaply and more efficiently than anyone else. In 5 years, I would be a multimillionaire again." This is the reply of the richest man in the world, a man who has worked the law. Think what you will of him in other ways. He knows the law of prosperity. This is a law which you can work if you will, but see that it is a law of mind and not some bit of mysticism shrouded in the twilight consciousness of superstition. The method of the widow and the prophet never fails. Try it yourself, and you will inevitably reap that which is rightfully yours: security, happiness, and prosperity. "Well, that makes it clear," said my man. "I begin to see now that this is not merely a piece of magic, but the right use of a law of creativeness, which everybody uses when he succeeds. We're just trying to use it consciously." "Exactly," I agreed. Only a few days later, things began to happen. My man was called up by a prominent bank in the city, asking him for an interview. This was out of a clear sky, except that he had done some of his former expert work for the same institution some years before. They asked him to take temporary charge of a manufacturing plant which the bank had been forced to take over to protect its equity. It was just the type of executive job he had been looking for, and while the product was not particularly in his field of knowledge, he was soon able to furnish a kind of organizing ability which at once began to eliminate waste and put the plant on a paying basis. Soon, he began to work on another project with his newly discovered technique of creative thinking. The stock of the manufacturing concern was in the hands of two warring factions. He saw that he must have control if he was to be able to complete his reorganization. Within another month, he had interested enough capital to have acquired 51% of the stock and now has the plant on a paying basis. Moreover, it will soon be his own business. Needless to say, he is a happy man and feels that he has made a great discovery. Not long ago, he said to me, "If you ever care to use this incident to illustrate how the law of mind works, I should be glad to have you do so. And if you need other evidence, I can furnish you a concrete instance for almost every week of my life, for I use this technique constantly." Then, after a moment's silence, he continued, "If you do try to pass this on to other businessmen, be sure to give a whole chapter to showing the importance of every one of those steps in the mental technique, especially that idea of first stepping your mind up. That helped me a lot." So in the next talk, I am endeavoring to set down the essentials of the formula as a practical businessman saw them, under the caption, 5 Steps in Mastery. Next section, Talk 7. 5 Steps to Mastery. Let us take up the steps of this formula one at a time in order that we may get a clearer idea of what each one implies. The formula. When I am conscious that my mind is an absolute creative power, whatever I ardently desire, vividly imagine, joyously accept as possible, and expectantly act toward, will inevitably manifest. First step. At first reading, the initial step of this formula may seem to be somewhat obscure in meaning, but the phrase, when I am conscious that my mind is an absolute creative power, implies a very definite way of stepping up the powers of mind, just as electricity may be stepped up to higher and higher potentials. The current which supplies your light bulb and your refrigerator comes over the wire at 110 volts, but it may be stepped up to 10,000 or 15,000 volts, vastly increasing its potentiality. Perhaps your mind and mine are running at 110 voltage level, and we need to increase our potential by stepping ourselves up a bit. This may be done by applying the law of mind mentioned in the first chapter, a principle, the importance of which can scarcely be overestimated. You will remember our statement of the principle. Mind operates under its own conception of itself. This means that if you think of yourself as hindered in the doing of creative work, your mind will cease in a large degree to function creatively. Conversely, it is a matter of common experience that if you believe you can do a thing, you do accomplish it. Thus, the concept which man holds over his own mind is more influential than the race has heretofore recognized. For if I really believe that my mind is a part of the one source of creativeness, mind, I shall be holding the concept over it of its unlimited ability to create. This at once lifts the whole level of mental activity to a higher degree of potentiality and efficiency. It dissolves inhibitions, instills a limitless though quiet confidence, ideally unifies conscious and subconscious levels, stimulates new intuitive perception, and in all ways lifts the individual mind to the level of superpower. It thus actually releases heretofore latent creativeness. We readily accept the fact that electricity does not change its nature when we step it up or down in voltage, yet its potential is so increased that it seems almost like a different kind of energy, demanding more highly specialized instruments for its handling, and in all ways seeming to take on greater powers of accomplishment. So, as you learn to step up your mind, you will find that your accomplishments are vastly different. Such treatment will not increase your intelligence quotient perhaps, but it will so increase the efficiency of your handling of the existent quotient that your mind will seem like a different mentality. Thus, very ordinary minds sometimes become able to produce far above their old norm of creativeness. The first step in obeying this formula, then, is to take a moment to meditate on the nature of mind, for thus only can you lift your conception of yourself. Say to yourself, till you feel and believe it, mind is the one creative power, and I am that mind. All the potentialities of creativeness are existent within me at this very moment. I am a part of the one creativeness, and my mind, when I so realize and use it, acts under its own creative law and is in a limitless degree productive. Second step. The second step in our formula states that whatever I ardently desire will manifest. Here again, we often disobey the proper technique of mind by feeling that desire is an unworthy or at least an impractical activity. We have been taught by semi-popular writers on applied psychology that desire is likely to be merely wish thinking, leading to a spineless kind of fantasy which we substitute for the practical world of actuality called hard facts. This, of course, is only one aspect of the truth. If we allow our mental operations to stop with desire thinking, we may truly be accused of impractical daydreaming or wish thinking. But desire, in deepest truth, is a practical way of drawing out from the subconscious depths of an individual's mind those ideas which are held inarticulate just below the surface of consciousness, and which are often most significant to his future development. Your deep self holds ideas of purposive action, but can only project them into consciousness as dim urges until, through desire, they are brought to the focal point of consciousness as ideas and ideals. So one is most likely to desire either those things which he has full power to obtain, or which, at least, lie in the direct line of his most needed unfoldment. Let your dim urges develop into desires. Then let the desires become articulate. Boldly think them out into verbal expression, knowing that this is a part of the creative technique. Set aside a little time each day, therefore, to draw your desires forward into conscious mind, and then write them out, and so objectify and define your ends or aims. This is the height of wisdom, for it is the very beginning of the creative process for you. Through it, you will find new and profitable ways of developing new business when other men are crouching in the grass waiting for the enemy to pass, or for the financial weather to clear. It may be well at this point to warn you that it is not desirable to turn your desire power toward actually existent things. Do not desire someone else's business, nor any other tangible asset. In the world of mind, these mental forces are to handle mental factors only. Whatever you desire as an ideal will concrete itself through this technique of mind. And to know this law will free you from the danger of coveting other people's property, conditions, or powers. Within yourself lies all potentialities. Use this creative technique and you will produce for yourself. Third step. Whatever I vividly imagine. Mind is unable to concentrate itself for long without a definite and tangible image. For most people need a concrete focal point which to fixate attention. Therefore, it is very necessary, if we really wish to do creative thinking, that we should early define our one aim. First, in words, for words are in themselves images, and afterward, in complete visual or feeling images. That is, If my central desire were to make more money with which to unfold happiness for myself and benefits for my friends, I would at first write this down in a phrase as my burning desire. This is my specific end. Now, I may continue by imagining the process by which I am to produce this money, and even invite visual images of actually having and handling more money. Often such an expedient helps to give me the consciousness of abundance, and it is not at all foolish to imagine how I would feel with plenty of money in my pocket and with the power to produce abundantly and spend freely. The really important step is to work out some definite value or service which you may give to society and which will, in turn, bring money back. Perhaps you already have some plan in mind which will benefit mankind. Then you must work out a concrete pattern by which you can first produce and then merchandise this service. If this process may be visualized, you should picture it in detail. But in most cases, detailed pictures do not come until later in your mental work. The best working images for the beginner are word phrases such as, I see this process of producing, name your project definitely, in operation. I imagine it being manufactured, and now I see it in detail just how it can be merchandised. Thus, state as definitely as you can your desire in the form of words, behind which are growingly definite plans, and, having written them down, return to them often to renew your mind as to your definite aim. Restate such phrases daily, giving mind within you a chance to bring to you new details and new ways and means of putting them into operation. Thus, imagination becomes the creative agency by which your ideals and plans are formulated in concrete outline. Do not minimize the importance of taking time in quiet to invite the mind within you to so produce in definite detail your dreams and desires. Next section, fourth step, joyously accept as possible. Whatever we repeatedly imagine and allow to become warm in consciousness begins to seem possible and even actual to us. Before ideas projected by desire and imagination may drop down on the subconscious level and really become working patterns for creativeness, they must be vividly felt as present realities. To love the thing you greatly desire and to feel it as now present are primary steps in this psychology of acceptance. This complete conviction of a project being just as good as done, Jesus called faith. This word has been much used in the Christian world and has beautiful connotations. Many people, however, are bewildered when they find it necessary to believe that the thing they wish and dream will come true. They do not know how to acquire faith, and something in them keeps saying, "This would be supremely desirable, but I don't believe it can ever happen. What's the use of kidding myself?" But this is not mental deception. For whatever is thus felt as on the way to us is being dropped down on the subconscious level of mind, where it is caught up and operated with a new kind of universal power consciousness. And when this feeling of joyous acceptance is complete, the matrix idea of your thought is already being actualized. This level of mind, called the subconscious, built your body and keeps it in repair. It is the substance mind and whatever it completely accepts and feels as already on the way will inevitably be produced. The word for faith, which best carries to most people this necessary action of the mind, without a mysterious religious suggestion, is the word belief. Whatever we completely believe and accept as being done, or even believe is possible of accomplishment, is already being held in the stream of universal mental substance and will surely be manifested. End of section. Fifth step. Expectantly act toward. The creative process is never finished until we have started something. We must act toward the result which we desire. Even though the action may at first of necessity be very fragmentary or ineffectual. So the next necessity is that I shall expectantly move toward the realization of my mind. No matter how slight the thing that you can do just now toward the accomplishment of your desire, do it. If you are looking for a new job, use all the material means, such as making personal applications, putting your name in employment bureaus, advertising in trade journals, so that on the material side, all the channels for the inflow of prosperity may be open. But don't forget that the most important thing is your own mental attitude and your own readiness to act toward the desired end, while vividly seeing yourself attaining it. Action is the most powerful of all suggestions to the subconscious mind. Thus, whatever you expectantly act toward is invariably caught up and operated upon by the universal creativeness. Summary. To summarize, take time once or twice a day to get quiet and give attention to the nature of your own mind. To think of it as an absolute creative power, which produces by purposive thought, is to keep it up to this level of its highest power to produce. Now, challenge your mind to create by awakening desire. Say, what is it I most want? Let imagination respond with a definite idea or image. Then, free yourself from fear and confusion by writing down your desires as definite projects embodied in words. Take time night and morning and many times during the day to read them over with as much expectancy and faith as you can muster. Then at night, go to sleep, allowing the mind to drift off into subconsciousness with the feeling that already these blessings which you desire are on the way to you. You will find this a very powerful method of using the mind and will soon realize that this law of creativeness does inevitably work. Then on the morrow, rise to act toward your project, no matter how seemingly slight the immediate consequence of the action may be. This formula embodies the very principle of prosperity, that within mind, your mind and mine, is a technique of creative thought which inevitably produces. Try it. It works. Whatever mind conceives and projects with conviction, it inevitably produces. A quote by Seaman Garns. If you haven't done so, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends also, and leave me a comment let me know you were here. So this is the end of part 1. Meet me at the next video for part 2 of Prosperity Plus.